What if the world we know wasn't the only one? Imagine, just for a moment, a reality where the Axis powers won World War II.
It's a chilling thought. What would daily life even look like? How would people feel living under that shadow?
Exactly. And today we're stepping into such a world exploring the pages of Philip K. Dick's novel, The Man in the High Castle.
And it's worth mentioning, our thinking on this has really been sparked by some fascinating analyses over on the YouTube channel, Mindful Moments.
Oh, right. They use AI to look at books in these really interesting ways, prompting, deeper reflection and critical thinking. It's quite cool.
It really is. So yeah, that's part of the inspiration for digging into this alternate reality today.
Okay, so let's dive in. We start in San Francisco. It's a part of the Japanese-controlled Pacific States of America in this timeline.
And we meet Robert Childen. He owns a shop, American Artistic Handcrafts, Inc.
Picture him sweeping his store in the morning. He sees the cable cars, women in silk dresses. It seems almost normal.
Almost. But there's this subtle, pervasive overlay, isn't there? The presence of the occupying Japanese power colors everything. It's normal, but different.
And his business, it's all about American historical artifacts, things wealthy Japanese collectors are really keen on.
Yeah, like an original artwork from Horace Greeley's office period, or maybe an old Victrola cabinet he's turned into a liquor cabinet.
Even a signed picture of Jean Harlow. And he uses these, well, psychological tactics with potential buyers trying to gauge their interest and push the value.
It's all about perception, isn't it?
Yeah.
What these objects represent to the collectors. It's a strange kind of cultural exchange, filtered through victory and defeat.
Childen's definitely anxious, though. You feel it. He's uneasy about, say, a Japanese man potentially getting involved with an American woman. Those lines are clearly drawn.
And he's got this crucial business appointment with a Mr. Tagomi coming up. He needs to impress him.
Right. He's thinking he needs something big. A restored 1929 Ford, maybe? Or a mint-condition old airmail plane. Something to keep Tagomi interested.
He even smokes what Dick calls a Lando Smiles cigarette marijuana to try and get inspired. It shows the pressure he's under to perform in this system.
Okay, now let's shift to Frank. Totally different situation. He used to work for a guy named Wyndham Matson, but now he's facing something called the Laborers' Justification Commission.
Yeah, he's been blacklisted.
Yeah.
He's worried, deeply worried about his work category, his whole future, and he carries this resentment towards Wyndham Matson.
He can't figure out how his old boss has so much pull with the Japanese authorities, it eats at him.
And Frank, he had these thoughts in the past, desires for revenge against the Japanese, against the puppet American government, the Peanuts. But time seems to have softened that, except for one specific person, a Mr. Omuro.
But his thoughts about the other winning power, the Reich, those are terrifying. He imagines Africa just ruined, a land for ghosts.
And these horrifying images of labs in Berlin, thinking about, uses for human remains, it's incredibly dark stuff. It shows the sheer terror the Nazi regime inspires, even from afar.
We also get a quick introduction to Juliana Frank's estranged wife, maybe. She has this portentous Nudnik Mona Lisa smile.
Yeah, Frank has very conflicted feelings about her. She seems significant, somehow mysterious.
Then there's Mr. Tagomi, the official Childen is so anxious to meet. He's in his office overlooking the bay.
And he prefers the blinds lowered. Says it helps him think clearly. He's waiting for someone else too, a Mr. Baines.
Who's arriving on a new German rocket, a Messerschmitt 9E. Think about that, rocket travel.
Tagomi's trying to be nonchalant about it, practiced indifference. But he's never actually flown in one. He's internally debating whether to bring up potential German mechanical failure.
Now he knows better. Avoid politics. Always avoid politics.
It speaks volumes about the atmosphere, doesn't it? The caution needed.
And this rocket highlights the tech difference. The Reich is way ahead, especially in synthetics, plastics.
Like that German car, the DSS der Schnellspeck, the Fast Ghost, all synthetic. A real symbol of their industrial power compared to the Pacific States.
Meanwhile, Childen actually manages to get a rare book Tagomi wanted. It's a success, but you feel his bitterness mixed with that small triumph.
It's always a compromise for him, isn't it? Surviving in this world.
We learn a bit about Childen's past, too. He used to own a secondhand bookshop, rough neighborhood.
And then this elderly Japanese ex-army major, Ito Humo, started coming in. Fascinated by American pop culture junk, really. Horrors of war, trading cards, old milk bottle caps.
With the sinking of the Panay card, that specific kind of ephemera becomes valuable, sought after by the occupiers. It's strange.
It really is. It shows this odd engagement with the culture they defeated. Is it curiosity, dominance, Hard to say.
Okay, let's jump zones. Juliana Frank is now in the Rocky Mountains free zone, a sort of neutral territory.
She's at a roadside hamburger stand. There are these two truck drivers there, Joe, a young Italian guy and an older man.
And they have different takes on living under the Japanese back on the West Coast. The older guy seems more accepting, maybe resigned. Joe's harder to read.
They even talk about Denver maybe getting Lufthansa rocket runways. And the fry cook makes this blunt statement, "No Japs killed Jews."
Yeah, a stark reminder of who the other victor was and what they were known for. The older driver even makes a prejudice crack about the locals being a little yellow. Tensions are everywhere.
And Juliana herself, she has these really cynical thoughts about the Nazis. Thinks their supposed sexual perversions stem from Hitler's background.
And sees their public face, that angelic simper, as just a facade hiding something monstrous. She clearly despises them.
Which makes sense. She represents a moral compass of sorts, reacting against the horrors of this world.
Now, back in San Francisco, Mr. Baines arrives on that Lufthansa rocket. He's immediately approached by a young German official type.
Who's surprised Baines doesn't speak German? Baines claims he's Swedish, says he's in international business.
He's clearly undercover, and internally, he's thinking about this concept, kikai, a feeling, a sense he gets from the Germans.
He describes it as unconsciousness, like they're unaware of the destruction they unleash. Their plans are frenzied and demented.
It's interesting how this connects back to what we were saying about critical analysis, like on mindful moments or in our own discussions here, trying to understand the mindset behind these huge historical shifts.
Exactly. Dick is exploring the psychology of totalitarianism. This Kike idea suggests a dangerous lack of self-awareness, a sort of moral blindness enabling their actions.
Baines then has this tense run-in with another passenger, a man named Lotze.
Lotz basically threatens him. Says if Baines' report isn't positive, he'll report him. It's thick with paranoia.
Baines doesn't back down, though. He makes a counterthreat and just walks away. There's a real sense of finality, of danger.
It shows the ruthlessness required to navigate this world, especially if you're playing a deeper game like Baines seems to be.
Let's circle back to Frank for a moment. We learn more about his past work for Wyndham Matson, or WM Corporation.
He used to make molds, cast small arms replicas from the American Civil War period. Really detailed work.
And the thing is, the Japanese collectors who bought them, they often didn't have the expertise to tell Frank's reproductions from genuine antiques.
So Frank was, in a way, creating fakes that satisfied the conqueror's desire for authentic Americana. There's an irony there.
We see this play out when a Japanese customer, Admiral Harusha, visits Childen's shop.
Right. Presents his card, wants to buy antique firearms. Specifically mentions a Colt .44 from 1860.
And he's willing to put down a big deposit, sight unseen almost, shows that demand again.
But then Frank has a conversation with someone named Calvin, who reveals he knows the guns Frank made were fakes.
But Calvin doesn't really care about authenticity. He just wants them to meet quality standards. Business is business, even with forgeries.
It highlights how practicality and profit can overshadow things like historical truth in this environment.
Meanwhile, Wyndham Matson, Frank's old boss, is having some truly nasty thoughts.
Oh yeah. He's thinking about getting revenge on Frank. He plans to tip off the German consul that Frank might actually be Jewish, living under an assumed name.
Hoping Frank will be extradited to the Reich and, well, gassed. It's horrifying. The reach and the terror of the Nazi ideology are inescapable.
It shows the personal vindictiveness, but also how easily the Nazi system of persecution could be weaponized, even in the Japanese zone.
Wyndham Matson also has this conversation with the girl, talking about historicity and authenticity.
Uses the example of cigarette lighters supposedly owned by FDR. He argues it's the paperwork, the provenance, that proves value, not the object itself.
The paper proves its worth, not the object itself. That's quite a statement about how reality can be constructed or faked.
Absolutely. It ties into the theme of forgery and authenticity running through the book. What's real? What's valuable? Who decides?
Wyndham Matson also dismisses popular fiction, specifically mentioning Hawthorne Evanson's book, The Titular Man in the High Castle. He sees it as just a mass craze for secretaries.
He clearly disdains anything that might question or offer alternatives to the reality he benefits from. Evanson's book, which imagines the Allies winning, is a threat to his worldview.
And later, Wyndham Matson is talking with someone named Rita about the post-war situation. They mention figures like Rommel, Albert Speer's economic role.
And the work camps in the East? Just matter-of-fact references to the grim realities under Nazi administration.
Okay, back to Mr. Tagomi. He finally meets with Mr. Baines.
It starts very politely. They talk about how peaceful the Pacific coast is compared to elsewhere.
And Tagomi references the I Ching, the ancient Chinese oracle book. He says, God speaks to man in the sign of the arising. He seems to find guidance there.
He also mentions believing that many books are actually alive with spirit. It shows a deeper, more spiritual side to him, contrasting with the harsh political world he inhabits.
He shows concern when Baines mentions a headache, even recommending fine German analgesics from I.G. Farben.
Another small nod to the Reich's perceived superiority in certain fields, even in medicine.
Let's check back with Juliana. She's thinking about why the Nazis might not like television.
Her theory: they have no sense of humor. They killed all the Jewish comedians. It's a dark observation, linking their ideology to a kind of cultural deadness.
Her interactions with Joe, the truck driver, get stranger. She feels he deliberately missed hitting her during some roadside incident.
And she starts probing his story, finds inconsistencies. He mentions driving Route 50, usually not 40 where they met. She asks his age and realizes he must have fought in the war. He seems cagey.
Then Joe introduces her to Ebenson's book, not The Man in the High Castle, but The Grasshopper Lies Heavy. That's the title within the novel.
Right, the book about the Allies winning. Joe gives this sarcastic summary of a British-controlled Europe.
And Juliana asks, surprisingly, would that really be so bad? Which leads to this argument. Joe seems almost defensive of the Axis powers.
Which is deeply suspicious, isn't it?
Hmm.
Why would this American truck driver argue against the Allies winning? It adds to the mystery around him.
Meanwhile, Mr. Tagomi has this sudden dizzy spell and illness during a really important meeting.
He thinks it's vertigo, maybe a diencephalon malfunction. He struggles to regain composure, tries to focus on the order of the world to ground himself. It feels like the stress is physically manifesting.
At that same meeting, a man involved in non-ferrous ores gives a pretty bleak assessment of the Reich's economic future.
Yeah, despite all their amazing tech atomic energy, rockets to Mars and Venus, he predicts instability. Says irresponsible leaders will inevitably rise. It's a crack in the facade of Nazi invincibility.
Now, Robert Childen visits the apartment of a Japanese couple, the Kasuras.
You see the cultural contrasts immediately. Childen is trying hard to navigate the social nuances. He admires Betty Kasura's appearance.
And he has a plan. He wants to give Betty a piece of his own handcrafted jewelry as a gift, hoping to introduce it as a potential new product line.
It's another attempt to leverage his skills and connections within the Japanese community.
And Mr. Baines learns something important. Plans have changed for Mr. Yatabe, who we suspect is actually General Tadeki in disguise. He's being recalled to Japan.
This suggests things are moving fast, maybe unexpectedly. The political situation seems volatile.
Juliana's frustration with Joe peaks. They're in the car. He's totally engrossed in reading The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, ignoring her, driving her car.
It feels like the final straw for her. The disrespect, the weirdness, it all comes together.
And back at the Kasuras, Paul Kasura gives Childen some really unexpected advice about his jewelry.
Tells him to withdraw it, meditate, reconsider his whole approach. He says Childen is morally obligated to promote these objects, suggesting they have real intrinsic value.
Childen is initially humiliated. Kasura implies they're just trashy good luck charms, but then Childen finds his footing.
Yeah, he pushes back, he asserts the artistic value of his work, demands an apology, and Paul Kasura actually gives him one. It's a turning point for Childen, a moment of self-assertion.
We then overhear a phone call. Mr. Tagomi talking to General Tadeki, who's still pretending to be Mr. Yatabe.
They're discussing Baines, the political climate. It confirms they're maintaining a certain fiction for safety. The general is very interested in whatever information Baines has about the Reich. High-stakes stuff.
And then disaster for Frank. The police arrest him.
They accuse him of being a Jewish refugee from Europe, operating under a false identity. It seems Wyndham Matson's threat wasn't idle. The system is closing in.
Meanwhile, Juliana and Joe are in Denver. They're buying expensive clothes.
Juliana gets this beautiful light blue Italian dress. It seems oddly extravagant given their circumstances.
They arrive at a really nice hotel room in Denver.
And Juliana's suspicion finally boils over. She questions Joe, how did he know about the valet service? His backstory seems fabricated.
Then she confronts him directly, accuses him of being an SD man, a Nazi agent sent to kill Hawthorne Ebenson.
And it leads to violence, a struggle. Juliana manages to stab Joe with a razor blade.
She grabs her new clothes, the dress, and flees the hotel, a desperate escape.
She leaves Denver, driving towards Cheyenne, Wyoming. Her plan: call Hawthorne Ebenson, find the author of the book that seems to hold some key.
Back with Mr. Tagomi. He's in despair. He knows about a potential German plan, Operation Dandelion, likely an attack on the Japanese home islands. War seems imminent.
He questions the whole alliance with Germany, the state of the world. It feels hopeless to him.
He takes a cable car ride, retrieves his briefcase. Inside is that Colt .44 pistol he bought from Childen earlier but returned.
He feels this new compulsion to keep it close. The world feels dangerous, and he's reacting, arming himself. It's a significant shift for him.
Tagomi even goes back to Childen's store. They have this cryptic conversation about Childen's authentic Americana containing the contracted germ of the future.
Tagomi seems to find some renewed hope, maybe in the persistence of the human spirit represented by these objects, even if he still distrusts Childen's Anglo-Saxon fanaticism.
Then Tagomi has this strange, profound experience in a park. He's meditating, focusing on a piece of silver jewelry. Childen gave him one of the handcrafted pieces.
He tries to understand it through different senses, enters this deep state, and then a policeman interrupts him, tells him to move along.
Tagomi is furious. He feels he was close to something, maybe nirvana. The interruption triggers this internal racist outburst against the white policeman. It shows his own ingrained prejudices, his frustration boiling over.
It's a raw moment. Shows how the pressure and the environment are affecting him, stripping away his usual composure.
He then has a humiliating experience trying to get lunch at a white-only counter. He's met with hostility, feels completely isolated.
He compares it to the Bardo Thodol, the limbo state from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. He feels disconnected, unreal.
He returns towards his office, afraid even of the Embarcadero freeway. He sees two Chinese boys, gives them dimes, a small human connection, before deciding, finally, just to go back to work.
He seems lost, adrift in this hostile version of America.
He talks with his assistant, Mr. Ramsey. They discuss General Tadeki's departure and Mr. Baines's disappearance.
Their main concern is the general. Tagomi realizes his own role in all this was essentially just to be their cover. He was a pawn in a larger game.
And then back in his office, Tagomi collapses. Chest pain, sees red sparks. He's clutching that silver triangle jewelry, a really dramatic climax for him.
It feels like the combination of all the stress, the moral weight, the confusion.
Elsewhere, Mr. Baines is reflecting. He's pessimistic about whether General Tadeki's efforts back in Berlin will actually succeed in stopping Operation Dandelion.
He muses on the nature of choice in their world. How there's no clear good versus evil. He longs for a simpler reality where morality is easier.
It echoes the reader's own struggle, trying to navigate the complex ethics of this alternate history.
And Juliana, she makes it to Cheyenne. She finds a phone booth. She calls the Abinsons.
She gets through. She arrives at their house, which is described almost like a fortress, nicknamed the High Castle.
And she confronts Hawthorne Abinson. Did he use the oracle, the I Ching, to write "The grasshopper lies heavy"? What's the truth about the alternate reality he depicted?
Abinson is evasive at first, but Juliana presses him. She needs to know.
And he finally admits it. Yes, he used the I Ching, chapter by chapter, turn by turn. The oracle guided the writing.
And the bombshell, the world Abinson wrote about, the one where the Allies won the war. According to the I Ching, that is the true, real world.
Wow. So the reality of the novel, The Nazi-Japanese Victory, is somehow false. Or just one possibility among many. The I Ching points to our history as the true one.
Juliana feels this incredible sense of release, of understanding. It's like breaking through a distorted mirror.
It validates her struggle, her sense that something was fundamentally wrong with the world she was in.
Benson seems kind of fatalistic about it all, though. Juliana urges him to hide, knowing he's a target.
And when Juliana confesses she killed Joe, the SD agent, Abinson accepts it with this surprising calm, almost like it was inevitable.
His wife, Caroline, calls Juliana disruptive, but Abinson defends her, says she's a force of reality breaking through.
It's a powerful ending for Juliana's journey. She sought the truth and found it, confirming her own reality.
The book itself ends with acknowledgments, listing the I Ching translation used, poetry sources, historical texts about Nazi Germany.
Grounding this fantastical premise in real-world references and philosophical traditions.
So, The Man in the High Castle, it just unfolds in these incredible layers, doesn't it? Reality, perception, history, how stories shape our understanding.
It really makes you think about our own world. How do we know what's real? How much is shaped by the narratives we accept? What power do alternate perspectives hold?
It definitely encourages that kind of critical thinking.
Absolutely. So we encourage everyone listening to keep exploring these ideas.
Yeah, subscribe for more discussions like this. Share it if you found it interesting. And if you haven't read The Man in the High Castle, Definitely consider picking it up. Check the link in our description.
And most importantly, keep questioning, keep thinking critically about the stories and histories that shape our view of the world. What other possibilities might exist?